You may wish to skip this video, it's up to you. What I'm going to be doing is in phpMyAdmin, which is a database tool. I'm going to be creating a new database to hold the same items as we've already done with the field names here and the data that we've got. And the way that I'm going to do that is pretty straightforward. Hopefully you'll see what's going on. But MySQL is the big brother of SQLite. In other words, it can handle more than one table. It's a true relational database. In other words, the tables relate to one another, although we're only going to be doing one very simple table. But it'd be useful just to see how we can do this with MySQL. Now, MySQL is also sort of the back end of web pages. It's the powerhouse that the majority of web pages in the world sort of store their data. It's quite a powerful tool. So when I created my Python database, I called it users. I don't want to call my database here users because I've got something called user accounts, and I want to be careful that I don't overwrite my user accounts. When I was using SQLite, really that was only good for storing one table. In other words, it's pretty much a flat file, whereas now I've got something which can handle many tables, as we can see from sort of opening up the MySQL database. Loads and loads of tables in there. Each one of these is a table. So I'm going to create a database first, and I'm going to call it Forest High School FHS, and just click create. Job done. So I've now got a database called Forest High School, and there is nothing in it. So I need a table, and the table that I'm going to create is users. So if we come back to this one, we've got a connection users to the users database. This is looking at our SQLite version, and I had a table called users. So I'm going to create that table with these field names. Okay. So to create the table, I need to call it users. There we go. And I only need 3 columns. One is ID, then name, and then password. So that is creating my 3 fields. Each row here is a field. So first of all, I've got to give them the name. So this one would be ID, this one would be name, and this one would be password, which now matches my 3 field names here. Now I have to state what type my data is in. If we go back to the notepad and take a look at the SQLite version, I've got ID was an integer, and I've got another word here, primary key. I'll explain that later. Then I had name, which was text, and the name was unique. In other words, we couldn't store, or don't want to store, 2 people with the same username, the same game name. And then we had password, and that is just text. We're not making it unique or anything because 2 people could have the same password. We definitely don't want 2 people to have the same name. So I'm going to specify that in this setup. So the default is integer. Not bothered about the length. What I am bothered about is whether it can be a primary key or not. So I'm now setting this up to be the primary key, which matches that. Next thing I'm going to do is something called auto increment. I'm not responsible for putting these numbers in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not bothered about that at all. Every time I put a new record in, the computer itself is going to work out what the number is. I'm just going to supply the name and the password, and the computer is going to supply the ID. So the next one would be 6, whatever the name is or whatever the password is, and I can force it to do that by putting a tick in that box with auto increment. If I go over there, that says auto increment, so the computer knows how many records, or the last number it used, and adds 1 to it. Right, name. I wanted that to be text to match the previous version in Notepad, so that was name text. Now I've chosen text. There are 2 versions. There's varchar, which is a variable character, which is probably the way I would normally do it. Text is for rather larger things. So the difference is that a varchar might be just this length here of this box, whereas text might be a huge box where I can type in tons and tons of characters. In fact, thinking about it, I'm going to just change it back to a variable character and make it 20 characters long. Just old habits die hard. And the last thing that I wanted was to set my name to be a unique. So I could not have two versions of the same username. I'll just put an index name in there. It's not needed. So that's my table set up, ready to go. I've set the field names, I've set the data types, I've set the lengths, I've allowed one to be a primary key, one to be unique, and I've set an auto increment. So if I save that, there we go. I've now got a table in here called users, and it gives me some information about what I've just set, so I can actually go back and change things if I need to. I can change things at any time, but it's best to change it before you start adding data to it. So this one says ID is the primary key, name could be a key. We will deal with that if we go into databases. It's a candidate key, just means it's unique. So it could also be a key field. The importance of key fields is that every item in this field is unique, okay, and that defines what a key is. Password, I'm not really bothered. It can be duplicated going along. The ID is auto incremented. Okay, and we've got the sizes here and the data types. So that looks good. All I need to do really is put my data in, Python Geek let me in, etc, etc, and I can do that rather simply by choosing insert, and then I can start typing things in. Not bothered about index. So the first one is Python Geek. The password was let me in. The next one was Elite and Blimey. And if I just choose go, let's put those 2 items in. And what I want you to see here is that we have what we call an insert query. This is part of this CRUD. This is the update. Remember, you don't need to know any of this at all, but if you are doing the project and using SQL in your project, then this becomes important. And that's what it looks like. So I could either write the SQL to add values in, or I can just insert some more data. So let's just insert some more data, it's easier. Zebedee and ask123. Zebedee and ask123. The next one was Larry the Loner. finally, let's just choose go on these two. There we go. And then just insert one more. Puritan and Swordfish. And there we go. We have actually created a database. Set up the primary key, everything else, and we have populated the database with some data. And if I click on browse, I will see my items. Now, I accidentally left one blank, so I could actually delete that. Now it matches. However, notice the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6, because I've just deleted 5. If I added a new record into my database, it would be at 7, because I'm not in control of the ID. So this actually conflicts with what I've got here, ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we'll deal with that later, and it's quite useful that it's turned out that way. So you've seen me create a database using MySQL. It really is quick. However, it does look rather complicated. And what I really want you to notice is all of this. This is SQL. Select star from users, and that is where we're going to go to, and that's what we're going to look at. That is what you're going to need for your exam.